All right, folks, gather round. It's time for another round of What in the Free Market is Going On Down in Argentina. President Javier Milei, yes, the chainsaw-swinging, government-slashing libertarian economist who somehow got elected in a country that spent decades neck-deep in socialism, just landed a $20 billion deal with the International Monetary Fund. That's right, $20 billion. And before you ask, no, it's not for another flashy World Cup bid or a giant steak-shaped monument in Buenos Aires. It's to keep the lights on while Milei continues trying to blowtorch the bloated Argentine state into something leaner, freer, and possibly functional for the first time in, well, anyone's lifetime. Now on the surface, this deal looks like a win. Argentina's been walking a fiscal tightrope for years. Actually, it's less a tightrope and more like a frayed shoestring hanging over a pit of inflation and despair. Milei's reforms have already slashed public spending, frozen infrastructure boondoggles, and put a hard stop to the endless subsidies that turn the government into an economic babysitter. But here's the rub. Radical reform takes time, and time, unfortunately, doesn't pay the bills. Enter the IMF, stage left, holding a checkbook and a clipboard. This deal gives him the breathing room to keep pushing reforms, while stabilizing markets and calming investors. That's the upside. The risk? The IMF doesn't exactly hand out cash with a wink and a handshake. There are strings, big ones. Strings that look suspiciously like long-term repayment plans, reform guidelines, and pressure that could curb the very boldness that got Milei elected in the first place. And let's not kid ourselves. The IMF has a history. Argentina knows it well. In fact, this isn't their first dance. It's their 22nd program with the IMF since the 1950s. That's not a partnership. That's a dysfunctional relationship with weekend custody of monetary policy. The last big deal was just a few years ago, a $44 billion loan during the COVID era that fizzled out in spectacular fashion. Inflation skyrocketed, reforms stalled, and the public grew even more disillusioned. So when people hear Argentina and IMF in the same sentence, their first reaction isn't hope, it's déjà vu. So here's where we have to ask the hard question. Is this $20 billion lifeline a strategic move to buy time for real economic freedom? Or is it just a high-interest delay button that'll pull the rug out from under reforms down the line? Supporters argue this is exactly the kind of bold move needed to escape the endless cycle of inflation and debt. The money gives the country the cushion to weather the short-term pain of removing price controls, cutting off unsustainable subsidies, and opening up markets to competition. And let's be honest, nobody else was going to float Argentina $20 billion and say, yeah, take your time, get your house in order. But critics, some even within his team, worry this could dilute the radical vision, because once you're on the IMF's tab, you're no longer the one calling all the shots. Bureaucrats in Washington start whispering about moderation, social protections, and measured transitions. Next thing you know, your economic revolution gets downgraded to policy adjustments, and suddenly you're back to debating subsidies for public tango lessons. Okay, maybe not tango, but you get the idea. Still, there's a path forward here. If Milei can stick to his guns, cut spending, shrink government, deregulate, and actually use the IMF's money to grease the gears of transition rather than fuel more state expansion, this could be remembered as the turning point, the moment Argentina stopped playing economic roulette and actually placed a long-term bet on liberty, markets, and reality. It's a risky bet, no doubt, but here's the kicker. So is doing nothing. So is printing more pesos. So is pretending that state-run programs funded by debt and fantasy are somehow for the people. And look, Argentina isn't alone. Every country that piles on debt, expands entitlements, and kicks tough decisions down the road should be watching this closely. Milei is doing what politicians in most developed countries won't even whisper in private. He's cutting, he's consolidating, he's confronting the beast head on. He's putting political capital on the line to fix what's broken, not just patch it with duct tape and applause lines. The world needs more of that. And there's a certain electricity in the air, like the feeling that, against all odds, something real might actually take root. You can see it already. Inflation is easing, Markets are stabilizing. Investment interest is creeping back in. But more importantly, there's movement, momentum, hope. Not the empty kind sold during campaign seasons. The kind built on trade, growth, and personal responsibility. Argentina's been here before, but never quite like this. The chainsaw is buzzing, the checkbook is open, and this time, the story might just end differently.